without further ado, let me just say a formally welcome to all that's on the virtual call with us today, both students, alumni, special guests, and of course, our panelists. To kind of get us started, I wanted, hopefully everyone's seen on their screen, a slide that shows an image of each of our panelists. As I do a brief discussion of them, we'll then move into a stage where basically you will see the four panelists on your screen. And there's a few other housekeeping things I'll go over with you in just a minute. But to welcome more formally our guest today, Travis Guidry is here today, Manager of Talent Attraction and Workforce Strategy with Entergy. We also have Missy Giudice, who's the Workforce Development Program Manager with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. We also have Suni Petal, a Talent Acquisition Manager with Accruent. And we also have Tracy Pettigrew, Employer Services Director at North Oaks Health System. So welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in this event. So what I'd like to do at this point is allow our panelists to talk a little bit more detail about their backgrounds. It would be nice if you can to share with us a little bit about sort of prior work experiences you had and sort of what led to you sort of being in the role that you're in now. So what got you where you're at, and also if you could share a little bit about the organization that you work with. So if we kind of keep the same basic order, what I'd like to do is start off with Mr. Travis Guidry.
Thank you, Ken. So first of all, thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure to be here and to be, talking to all of these students. And, my career hasn't been a straight line. And so when I was in college, I really had no clue as to how my career would turn out and that it would end up this way and that I would be working for Entergy today. But, in between graduating from LSU in 1999 and being at Entergy in 2020, there's a lot that happened. And I, graduated from LSU actually with a psychology degree and a French minor. And right out of college for 5 years, I taught high school French at the Dunham School in Baton Rouge. And then I decided to move to New York City to pursue one of my passions of gospel singing, to sing with the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, and my career fell into place after that. In New York, I had an opportunity to work for a Big Four accounting firm at the time, for KPMG, in an administrative role, and then a friend of mine was working at an executive recruiting company called Heidrick & Struggles and recruited me to go there, and that was my intro into recruiting. The funny thing about my career is that each of the panelists, I have something in common with them in that I've worked in every one of their industries. And that's kind of the cool part about having the background that I have. And when you do some sort of corporate support function, you can work in almost any industry as long as you're willing to learn what that industry does. And it makes your job fun and it never gets boring. But after that executive recruiting job, when 2008 hit and the economy tanked, I was laid off. And I had an opportunity to go and work for an AIG company called Alico. So that was insurance. So that was my experience there in talent acquisition and talent management. The company was sold to MetLife. And from there, I ended up going over to BNP Paribas, which is a large French bank. So I did banking on Wall Street and running internship programs there. I also worked at NASDAQ, which is, mainly technology. It's the stock market, but I ran their campus recruiting program there. And I had stints at Heineken while I was in New York doing some consulting work and, and a few other companies as well, but decided to move back to Louisiana. I'm originally from Cutoff, Louisiana, down in Lafourche Parish in the South Lafourche area. And when I moved home in 2015, my first job back was Director of Talent Management at Cardiovascular Institute of the South, so healthcare. So I had experience in healthcare as well. It's a little bit of a smaller company, and altogether it wasn't really where I saw my long-term goals fitting in, and I left, CIS and ended up getting an incredible opportunity to go in at Entergy in an old role that was a step backwards. That's going to happen sometimes in your career, but you make those decisions for the right opportunity. And it was really to lead Entergy's campus recruiting, and campus relations program, not in a leadership role like I had become accustomed to and, and all that, but it was fine because I knew I was going to a great company where I'd have lots of opportunity. And within a year of being at Entergy, I was promoted to be manager over talent attraction within workforce strategy and talent management. And since then, so I've been at Entergy for 2 years, just about 2.5 years now. And I've been given some, company-wide projects with lots of visibility, lots of, other people reporting to me on these projects, and serve on storm response teams. And so there's lots of fun work that's going on beyond just the day job of, running a team that attracts talent to the company. And my point in sharing that is not so anyone could be impressed with, what I'm doing, but so that you can realize that there's so much opportunity to do with to do things with your degree that you haven't even thought of yet. And I know we'll get into some of that more as the questions go on. But in my own experience, I've had such an incredible and fun career up until this point, and it's not even close to being over. And so I just want to say that on the onset to encourage everyone that if you don't have it all figured out yet, and right now we're in tumultuous times, and I know a lot of people are scratching their head thinking about what am I going to do and what am I going to do when I graduate college, give it some thought, but don't be too hard on yourself, because I'm sure that each of you will have a really fantastic career as well.
Thank you so much, Travis. What an interesting, dynamic combination of experiences. So thank you.
Definitely.
So next on our list, I'd like to turn to Missy Giudice.
Thanks, Ken, and certainly an interesting story and career path, Travis. It's funny because it's similar to mine in a little bit. Today is my 2-year anniversary with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana, so super excited about that. My role is Workforce Development Program Manager, so I handle apprenticeships, our internship program / campus recruiting, and then really any other sort of like pipelining of entry-level talent into the organization. But prior to that, for almost 11 years, I was with a regional local public accounting firm, Postlethwaite and Netterville. Did pretty much everything on the recruiting side of things for them. That was really back from 2008 is when I went back into the workforce. But kind of just to back up a little bit there, I actually got my degree in marketing from LSU. And when I got out of school, really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and went to work for Maison Blanche, which I know that's going to date me a little bit. Probably most of the panelists will know who that is. Probably most of our students won't. But basically a local retail chain, which then was bought by eventually Saks Fifth Avenue, and I was in a departmental manager role or trainee role. And about 6 months in, my manager went out on sick leave. And basically, I was afforded a few opportunities because of that kind of pushed me a little bit along the way. And so shortly after that, was offered a position in operations and human resource management with that company. And then eventually had my own store and really took on a management role from that perspective. Many things happened in the retail industry and still continue to happen in the retail industry. And so really from there, when I went to work, I stayed home for a few years I had small children at the time, and retail was, not exactly family friendly. So stayed home for a couple of years and then decided in 2008 to go back into the workforce. And that's when I started working for the local public accounting firm. And then, like I said, did that for about 10 or 11 years, but really found my passion in kind of campus recruiting, helping students find kind of what their path was in the world. And again, kind of to echo Travis's comments, a lot of times you really don't understand or know what you want to do, even though you're told you're supposed to know what you want to do and when you're in college. But it certainly has opened my eyes, especially from a public accounting perspective, how students kind of get into those roles and then move forward from there. And then in my transition to Blue Cross, really, program management has been super exciting and really kind of reinventing kind of what campus recruiting looks like here. So Super excited to be able to talk to you guys today, and look forward to hopefully seeing you on campus in the spring.
Thank you so much, Missy. Another interesting combination of experiences to show that everyone's career is not a direct one-way line, point A to point B. There's many lines in between. So thank you. So I think next on our list that we would like to turn to is Ms. Suni Petal. So Suni, why don't you share some information about your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Suni, and I am the Talent Acquisition Manager at Accruent right now. And Accruent is a global software company, and we're actually headquartered in Austin, but we do have an office here in New Orleans that we are working to build out. And we actually have 22 locations globally, and about 1,300 employees. So definitely, lots of growth in our future as well, and especially post-COVID era, lots of opportunity for remote positions too. So in my current role at Accruent, I oversee all the North American recruitment, and I lead a team of 5 recruiters, and they're all based in actually different locations. A couple of them in New Orleans with me, but then the others are spread out. And prior to working at Accruent, actually, I worked exclusively in the nonprofit sector. So I started my career at Tulane University working in sort of an admin role, and then moved into a academic and career advisor role, which was really fun. I really enjoyed working with the students and helping them plan their, course trajectory, majors, and then ultimately kind of those preparing for those first entry-level jobs. And I loved working at Tulane, but here in New Orleans, there's a ton of different charter schools, and charter schools are really kind of big business down here. And so I knew that I wanted to get involved in those some way. And I thought it'd be a pretty easy jump. I had taught a little bit, like different summer programs when I was in college, and, I was working in a nonprofit industry in education, but it was really difficult. It took me almost a year to get my first job in a charter school. And this was, there are many charter school networks. It's not like there's only one, school that I could get hired at. And that was my first foray into recruiting. I had done all the hiring in my department at Tulane, but not, in a specific recruiting context. And I really enjoyed working with charter schools, but, every industry has its pain points. And I was really excited about the idea of getting into tech. I think, technology, we all hear it all the time, is the wave of the future. It's a really stable industry. Companies will come and go, but the skill set you build in that industry, you can take to, many, many different companies, right? And so I think, I never thought that here in New Orleans, I've lived here my whole life. Tech companies are sort of a new thing. And I thought, even when I applied to my first job at Accruent, which was a recruiting position, that I wouldn't have a good shot at it because I didn't have tech experience. And my general advice, in terms of getting into a new industry, is really just not to give up. As Travis said, you don't even know where your career will take you, especially right now. You're probably focused on thinking about your first job out of school, and that's a really important role. And internships help with this too, but it'll help you determine what do you like, what do you not like, and that'll help you kind of wind your career trajectory up from there. But my general advice is, if there's an industry that you're really hoping to break into, and you don't think that you have the right major for it, or you didn't have the right internships for it, just definitely don't give up, because if you network really hard and keep at it, you'll have the opportunity. And I'm living proof. Break into the tech industry. You can do it. I can do it. You can too.
Awesome. Suni, thank you so much. That's very motivational. Thank you for sharing that. So our fourth panelist, Ms. Tracy Pettigrew, allow her to kind of share some of her background and experience at this point.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be here, and it's interesting listening to the other panelists' stories. Mine is probably very similar. I am born and raised here in Hammond. Wanted to kind of venture away from home, so moved to Baton Rouge to go to college, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I don't really feel like back in the day when as old as I am, that there weren't a lot of resources for career planning, a lot of guidance, and so I didn't really know what was out there in terms of career possibilities. Picked education as a major because I thought that that's what I wanted to do, was to be a teacher. So English, majored in English, had a minor in psychology, graduated, came back to this area and decided, that I taught for about 6 weeks and realized that was not what I wanted to do. I have all the admiration in the world for educators because it only took me about 6 weeks to realize that wasn't really what I was meant to be. I fell into a position here at North Oaks in HR and absolutely loved it. And I've actually been here now for almost 26 years and worked in HR the whole time, realized this was my passion. Started out as doing some program event planning and recruitment. Absolutely had a passion for recruitment, but feel like that kind of my journey took me in a direction of realizing that people who are, young adults going into college don't exactly know what they want to do. And you may have a vision and a goal, but then when you get out into the workforce, realize that there's all the possibilities in the world out there for you to do. And so spending, over 2.5 decades in healthcare, I will say this has probably been the most interesting and challenging year of my career by far. And so even doing this role for such a long period of time, it's proof that you can continue to learn and grow and adapt and change course. I actually now manage the employee wellness department as well, which has been an interesting challenge in the COVID era. So super excited to be here because I feel like it does. This is a great opportunity for students to get to ask questions and realize that your path can take many journeys, and no matter how long you've been in the workforce, you can continue to grow, learn, and explore new opportunities out there.
Tracy, that's wonderful information, a very interesting background as well. And speaking of the idea of our students being able to ask questions and hear responses to various questions, we're just to kind of go over things in a little more detail with our students that are and alumni that are joining us today. Want to mention that we're about to start a process of asking some predetermined questions that are specific that I'll be asking as the moderator to you all as a panelist. With each question, it's not necessary for everyone to answer, but at the same time, I'm encouraging each of you to think about the question, and you're certainly welcome to provide your feedback and your perspective on the questions. So we'll do predetermined questions for a period of about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're going to move into a period of time where we're going to allow our students to ask questions. And the way students will basically have the opportunity to ask questions is through the chat box. We'll ask students as you're thinking about what's being asked, and if you came to the panel discussion with some specific questions in mind, we want you to share those questions through the chat box. And I have someone, Mr. Craig Marinello in the background, and Carmen Mallet, who are looking at those questions, and we'll get to that part of the panel after about 20 minutes of predetermined questions. And then after that, there's a few last minute things we want to remind students about, and then that will conclude our panel discussion today. So without further ado, I do want to start by asking a question to the panel, and it's what information should students include as part of their pitch when speaking to an employer at Virtual Career Fair? And what are your general expectations when meeting a student at a Virtual Career Fair? Should the students pitch something different from when going to a virtual career fair versus an in-person career fair? So is it the same, or is that changed in some way? So would like to just kind of get an impression if anyone wants to volunteer.
I'll volunteer, Ken.
All right, Travis.
I'm good with that one. I was thinking about it a little bit, and I think it's very simple. The main ingredient is you. That is the one thing that you must include. The technical skills, everybody that's going to meet you at a career fair or an employer that's going to interview you, they expect you graduated from Southeastern. They know it's a good school. That's why they recruit from Southeastern. They expect that you are going to have certain technical aspects that come with a degree that you've earned. And that's a given. And, it's important to share if you've had internships and all of those extra things beyond just getting the degree. But you are the most important ingredient. They need to know who you are, who they would be hiring. And so with that, it's funny because my niece was interviewing for a job at Lady of the Sea Hospital today, which she got. I'm so excited for her. But she was asking me yesterday to coach her through it. And I told her, I said, these are some popular words you hear today. I'm a big follower of Brene Brown, and having courage and vulnerability is so important. And I'm telling you that as a recruiter, it's something that before those were popular words, I always valued. When someone brings their true self to the table when you're interviewing them and you're meeting them, you feel like you're getting the real deal and you know what you would be buying if you hire them, because they are buying you in a sense. They're giving you money and a salary to do work for them. So make sure that you bring yourself to it. And then for virtual events, I would say that one of the things that I found that's super important is trying to get face-to-face interaction as much as you can. And over video is fine, but I know that some career fairs are set up in a way where it's more of a chat room situation, or you might be having emails with a recruiter. If you could set up a WebEx with a recruiter, that is the most valuable thing, because if you're just some disembodied voice on the other end, and that has an impressive resume, it's hard for them to remember who you truly are. But if they got to see your face, it's just human nature. It's the way it's psychology. See, I learned something with that degree from LSU, right? If they can see your face and they can connect with you one-on-one that way, you're going to be much more memorable, and it makes it much better for you to get a job. So, at a high level, those are the two things that I think are most important to focus on.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I would probably add there, I think it's important to remember that even though it's virtual, professionalism is still a key component. I think it's easier behind a screen to sometimes let that professionalism lack, especially if you're doing video conferencing or whatever. But, you still want to maintain professional communication. It's very easy to get into the text message language, as I would like to call it, with the text abbreviations, just professional dress, the atmosphere around you, and just remember that even though it's virtual, it's still a professional environment.
Excellent. Suni or Missy, it looks like Missy unmuted her mic. So Missy.
I did, but I also think that it's as part of it, just like you would at a in-person career fair, research the employers that you're scheduling to meet with. Understand what you're looking for, be able to share how you are interested in their company and why you're interested in their company. And kind of to go off of Tracy, you really want to make sure that your presence on screen, you definitely want, if you have video capability, to use it, and make sure you're not all the way up in the computer screen. Make sure that you, are back a little bit, because you want to make sure that you are seen as professional and not inexperienced.
Yes. Suni, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think y'all covered it pretty well.
Yeah, it was very, very good interaction and great additional points made. So the next question, tell us about the biggest mistakes you see with applicants at job fairs, on applications, during interviews, etc. And are there some things you consider to be immediate turnoffs or negatives that kind of shuts you down?
Yeah, sure. I can take this one. So kind of what Missy was saying, it's important that you've done some research to the company. And if you're speaking with a representative, it's great to have a specific question about the company or the role that you are interested in. But I think a big mistake that students make is that they print out a stack of their resumes in a traditional career fair, and they just hand them out to every recruiter, every table. And so it's very clear you don't have a clear focus of what you're looking for. So when you submit your resume, you should have an understanding of why you feel like you could be a good fit for the position and what specific skills you're bringing to the table. So, maybe I understand if you attend a large career fair, even virtually, you might want to speak about to recruiters about a number of different positions, but consider having multiple versions of your resume, maybe an analytical one, maybe one that's focused on communications, highlighting different internships and different components of those internships, or even part-time jobs, right? So here at Accruent, we have certain roles that are customer facing, and we also have software engineering roles. That shouldn't really be the same resume, because, if you have been a cashier over the summer, that could say a lot about your, customer facing ability, whereas it doesn't really tell me a lot about your ability to be a software engineer. If you want to be a software engineer, I'm much more interested in the projects you've worked on in your physics class and what your teachers have to say about you, right? How you can think logically and conduct experiments. So that's a really different skill set. So I just encourage you to be thinking about that when you're creating your resumes. Make sure to call out, of course, course, at your first job, no one expects you to have a long list of previous jobs that you've worked at, but definitely call out projects or classes you've taken where you feel like the skills are really relevant to the job that you're applying for. So I think that's kind of a mistake people make, and also something that they can do to really set themselves apart.
Excellent information, Suni. Thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on Suni and Missy both, because Suni, before you spoke, I was thinking if I was going to, if I would have said something first, I would have said exactly what you said about doing your research. That's especially when it's a company that, I think of Entergy. If you live in South Louisiana, in Southeast Louisiana in particular, and especially if you're from the New Orleans area, it's a company that you can't avoid knowing. I mean, our branding is everywhere. Our bucket trucks are everywhere when you pay your power bill. And you'd be surprised at how many people will come, visit us at whether it's live or virtual career fair, and they don't know anything about Entergy. And I'm like, gosh, we were kind of an obvious one for you to research because we're a big company and we have lots of opportunities for you. But on top of it, again, what Suni just said, for me, the biggest turnoff is even more than not doing the research on the company is when I ask someone, well, what are you interested in doing? And they have zero clue whatsoever. And I understand that sometimes it's hard to figure out what you want to do when you're in college, but at least have an idea of the things that you like doing so that you can have a good conversation with a recruiter, because it's not the recruiter's job to figure out what you should be doing. And, when I think about Entergy is a company of almost 14,000 full-time employees, and we get over 100,000 applications every year. And so you want to differentiate yourself from all these other, candidates. And guess what? If you don't know who you are and what you're interested in doing, a recruiter will quickly just pass on to, that next person, because they don't have the time to figure it out for you. You got to go figure that out for yourself. And so do the work and looking internally and figuring out who you are and what you really enjoy doing.
Excellent. Anyone else? Tracy?
Yeah, I would also add, especially when you're applying for full-time jobs, make sure that your resume demonstrates that you have the ability and the qualifications for the job. So you don't want your resume to get thrown out because you don't have on there that the job requires SQL skills and you don't have SQL anywhere on your resume. So when a recruiter's looking at your resume, they might look at it for anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes at the most. And so they're looking to determine quickly whether or not you have the ability to do that job. And so you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward for every job that you apply for, regardless of, kind of what's out there. So definitely make sure that you put those qualifications at the top of your resume so that they can find it quickly.
Yeah, and kind of Tracy may have something to add, but just kind of I'm hearing a theme of it's important to consider the company you're applying with, what position you're applying for, and thinking about customizing the resume so it speaks to that company or that position, and not just using a universal resume for every possible company and position you may apply for. So Tracy, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, and it really kind of piggybacks on what everyone else said. But I think it's important to remember the interview process is a two-way street as well. So doing your homework is important on the company. But I think I like when candidates have done their homework and are willing to ask me questions on the organization, because it shows that they're really truly interested in learning more about the company, because it should be a two-way fit. So not only are we interviewing you, but as a student, you should be interviewing the company that you're going to work for and make sure that it's a good culture fit for you as well.
That's excellent. Our next question is sort of related to some of the things that kind of came up in this question. And the question is, what stands out to you on a resume? What constitutes a good resume or a good application, in your opinion?
So I'll get started on that one, Ken. I think from just the physical resume itself, number one, it should be very easy for a recruiter to quickly scan your resume and pick up the key items that you would want, them to know about you. What experience you might have, if you had internships, your major, all those important things that they would want. If your resume looks too cumbersome and it's hard to read and a recruiter has to spend time on it, they're likely going to pass to the next one because they're shuffling through lots of resumes, and usually it's on a screen. I would say from a content perspective, what I look for is someone who's well-rounded. You know, you can have a 4.0 GPA and have, you know, a really difficult major and whatever, but if that's all that's on your resume and you weren't in any clubs, you didn't have any sort of leadership at any point, even if you were taking care of, let's say, a elderly parent or grandparent, something to show that you have maturity, that you have responsibility, that you're more than just someone who can study books. That's what's going to set you apart as what we like to call that kind of all-around athlete person that you would want to bring into your company because they show that they have an aptitude to learn things, to take on responsibility, and that they have maturity.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on that?
It needs to be easy to read. You know, especially when you're going through resumes on a screen, typically now that's really the way we do it. That's something that definitely needs to happen. Same font, nothing crazy. You know, it's just kind of a little bit easier on the eyes, as we say. So definitely that. And again, as a college student, you really should not have you know, a resume more than one page. It should be, you should definitely keep it to one page. And again, back to what Travis was saying, making sure that you are kind of a well-rounded kind of student so that we see all of those different attributes about you.
Excellent. Another question, what are the top qualities that you look for when you're recruiting students primarily for entry-level positions?
I'll start there. You know, I think somebody, maybe Travis or someone mentioned this earlier, that coming out of school, you know, I would expect coming out of the quality programs that they're coming out of, that there's a certain skill set there already. I like those candidates that are eager to learn and grow. You know, when I'm hiring for a position, I'm not necessarily hiring for somebody who is just wanting to kind of come in and stay stagnant. I'm looking for somebody who wants to come in, grow, is eager to learn, experience new things. So that's really something that's important, you know, because we're looking for people who want to grow with the company, who want to not necessarily move up the ladder, although if they do, that's great, but even who want to learn new skills in different parts of the organization as well, and can be flexible and adapt. Obviously, we've seen that that's a great trait to have. This year would kind of showcase that, but those are all skills I think are really important.
Excellent. Travis or Suni, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, for entry level roles, a couple skills that I looked for are definitely communication skills, attention to detail. So this will also show up on your resume. You know, make sure you've checked it twice, had your friends check it, had your career advisor check it, make sure that you don't have any, you know, obvious typos. And then really the ability to seek out answers on your own. I know this would be a hard one to convey on a resume, but when I was recruiting at Accruent, I would recruit in the software engineering space, and I would hire software associates a lot. And we don't expect you to have a ton of experience, you know, in many different coding languages, but we will always ask when you've had to teach yourself something on your own. As a software engineer, you know, there's always a new program to learn, always a new code to get up to speed with, and you know, frankly, the managers don't always have time to walk you through everything. So the good answers are honestly the students who say, oh, I watch a YouTube video. Oh, I look at Reddit, right? So, I mean, this can translate to any field that you're in. Just how do you seek out information on your own instead of just asking for help? And that's really would come out more in like a recruiter phone screen or a, you know, phone interview with a hiring manager. But have those examples ready as you sort of prepare for your interviews, because those are the main things. You know, you're not going to, in your first job, people aren't going to ask you a ton about your technical proficiency. It's a lot more of these soft skills and do you have are you going to be a good culture fit with the organization?
That's excellent. Travis, you have a comment to round us out before we move to the student-based questions?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I want to add one more thing in there. Be aware of the energy that you're projecting. And that might kind of sound, out there pie in the sky, but I'm telling you, it's so important, because the most important thing that we cultivate in any company is our culture. And when you are interviewing for a company that is very proud of the great culture they have and they're known for it, they don't want anybody coming through the door with negative energy that isn't going to be a team player or is going to be gossiping about other people or anything like that. So be very aware of the energy that you're projecting. And I will remind you the cardinal rule when you're interviewing: never, ever, ever, ever talk negatively about anyone you ever worked for, about the company, about the people. I don't care what your experience was, or in school if you had a bad experience. You need to come from a place of positivity and yes, and hopefully it's very genuine, because they'll figure it out when you come through the door if you were just putting on a front. But that's the only thing I'd want to add there.
That's awesome. That's really good. So now we're going to transition to a part in our employer panel discussion where we are encouraging and allowing our students that are listening in and watching to ask questions. So looking at the chat session, the chat bar, it looks like Jenna Anderson is asking, what helped you get to where you are? Influential, effective in the forefront. What advice would you have for others who want to set off in a similar direction?
So I'll start with this one. I think what helped me to get where I am is really tenacity, just making sure that I was, excited about learning something new. When I first got out of school, that was one of the things I started learning and doing, and got pushed into the HR direction and field. And so that really sort of kind of set me off in the HR kind of track. And having somebody have faith in me that I could do something was super important. And so those mentors that you have along the way are super, super important as well. So find somebody that you respect and that you trust, and that will tell you straight up, hey, you're not doing this right, or you should do this differently, because they will also be in your corner when you're succeeding as well.
Anyone else want to take a run at that question?
Hey, I'll jump in. Your network. My network has gotten me everywhere that I've been that has been anything worth anything. And I'm telling you, you can never overestimate. I mean, when I was in New York at the beginning, I was telling y'all about some of the jobs I had, and the economy tanked in 2008 and no one was hiring. Within a matter of days, I got a phone call from that AIG company that I mentioned, Alico, because someone that I worked with at the previous company thought highly enough, two different people actually, to call someone at that company who called me for an interview. And when I was laid off again, because, the company was sold, it was my network. It was someone I had previously worked with that called me for the interview. And I'll tell you again, I got laid off there. They were cutting corners. I mean, the economy was really bad for a period of time on Wall Street. And I got laid off again. And literally the next morning, I was woken up by a phone call from a recruiter, because an HR business partner at the bank I was working at called that recruiter and said, hey, Travis Guidry was laid off and you need to put him somewhere. And I didn't ask for any of it. I never asked anyone, but my network came through for me, because I built meaningful relationships with people. And they weren't one-way relationships about what you can do for me. I always had those people's backs as well. So your network is extremely important. And there's that old saying of, watch how somebody treats the janitor or the wait staff or whoever might be seen as the least important person on the totem pole, because the person that treats those people that can't do anything for them well is the person you want to hire. That is so true. And it's just a good life lesson, a life rule to live by. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know who can be the person to make that connection for you.
That's powerful. That's very powerful information. Tracy, did you want to comment on anything Travis just said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And we actually have a saying kind of in our department that after we, complete an interview, it's the person at the front desk that I value her opinion on, because I know she can give me a read of how that person interacted with her at the front when they didn't think anybody was looking. and she has the most valuable opinion, probably more than any of us in the building. And I would also say when it comes to achieving your goals, I think it's learning to voice those goals and not figure out that the people in the positions above you or that have some control know what your goals are. You need to be confident enough to voice your goals and what you're looking for in terms of career objectives. And making sure that you're having those frank conversations to try to lead you along the career path that you want to venture down. And that way there's no expecting for someone to know what you're looking for. You kind of have to voice that on your own as well.
Very good. Suni, did you have anything you wanted to add to that conversation?
I would agree with Travis about your network. And what I was going to say is a lot of networking conversations, especially at the beginning of your career, are painful when you don't have a tailored network. I mean, I know people who want to go out and they don't have a job and just say, help me get a job. And, that's just not the right way to approach it. Kind of echoing what other panelists have said to you. Have an idea of what it is that you're thinking that you want to do. And, Travis was mentioning he has all these roles at Entergy. You don't, and I'm seeing some of these questions come through, you don't necessarily need to know specifically all of the tech roles that Accruent has. You just need to be able to speak to a recruiter and say, hey, I'm really good at math, logic, problem solving. Or, hey, I really enjoy, I'm really strategic and analytical and I enjoy helping people, right? And if I hear that as a recruiter, I'm going to think, oh, this person could be a customer success manager, right? This person could be on support. It depends. So you don't have to necessarily know what all those technical terms are in all of these different industries. You just need to know yourself and need to be able to relay that information to a recruiter. And when you are working and networking at the beginning of your career, it's a lot less of, people going to call you for opportunities necessarily, but it's a lot of you asking questions of just different people that you meet along the way. And I always recommend to everyone when you're networking, after you make the pitch of what it is you're looking for or trying to learn more information about, always ask the person on the other end of the phone, who else do you think I should talk to? Because what you're doing then is you're tapping into their network as well. And that's how you're going to really expand your own network.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we have about 3 or 4 more questions that have come up in the chat box. It looks like Jacob Deliberto is asking, what are some of the top things you think students need to do to prepare for this year's virtual career fair? And this kind of being a lot of our students' first time ever to do a virtual career fair. And we're using Handshake. So Handshake will have the ability for video capability, similar to what we're doing now, and not just a chat box and not just text messaging. So anything that y'all want to reiterate, maybe you've touched on it earlier, but just kind of quickly say, what do students need to be doing to prepare for this format of a career fair?
I think just presenting yourself professionally and putting your best foot forward, which is exactly what I would say at an in-person career fair. Making sure you're doing your research, putting your best foot forward, and being able to communicate and research your employers that you're visiting with. Excellent.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, first, I'm glad to hear y'all are using Handshake because although it's had its glitches earlier on, I think they're kind of working through it, and it's one of the better platforms that we've experienced this recruiting season. The one thing is, if I'm not mistaken, the slots are like 10-minute slots. So realize that you have a finite time to talk to an employer. So be ready to express yourself succinctly. Work on that elevator pitch. I mean, seriously, work on your elevator pitch. Know exactly what you want to communicate. And have some questions ready because you won't have time to pause and think, and you got to do it real quickly.
That's excellent advice. And just so our students understand, most employers are choosing to do a mixture of one-on-one 10-minute sessions combined with at least one or more what they're referred to as group sessions. And group sessions will allow multiple students to come into the platform, and some employers are choosing to use that time to kind of do a little bit of an information session, kind of describe the company and some of the positions they have available. In other instances, it's more of kind of an open dialogue amongst the students and the employer. So just be adaptable, I would say, as a student, but I completely agree with what our panelists are telling you. You need to be prepared and think about what you're going to say ahead of time. Another question comes from Allison Caswell and says, what is the biggest challenge in your field or industry that you are facing at this moment? What are your what are you also excited about in your field or industry at this time?
So I'll start by saying I think one of the most exciting things in our field right now that we are tackling is analytics, and that's something that we are also doing in conjunction with the state with the COVID-19 situation that's going on, and a lot of our interns have actually been participating in some of that. Some of those projects that we're working on, so hotspotting projects and stuff like that. So I think that's and you wouldn't necessarily think Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana and technology, but that's definitely one of the biggest areas within our organization, and so that's pretty exciting.
Very exciting. So either share something with us that you're finding really exciting at this point, either within your industry or field or within your organization, or share with us something that you find extremely challenging and very difficult at this time.
Okay, can I make that or an and? Because I'm going to tell you, first of all, what's exciting is that we are at an opportunity, and it's not just in the power utility industry, it's in healthcare, it's everywhere, where we get to scrap all the rules and kind of start things over. We are innovating the way that we are doing business. For example, one of the projects I've been asked to lead for Entergy is our Future of Work project. I have about 50 people working with me on this right now, and we are developing our long-term remote work policy and how we're going to manage that after the pandemic and how we're going to return people to the office safely and all that sort of stuff. So it's exciting because this is work that is exposing me to every different business unit within the company and to things that I never would have learned otherwise. And it's really exciting to be a part of that. I'm going to tell you on the flip side of it, the challenge right now is that everybody's exhausted. In our industry alone, we're all busy with our corporate responsibilities, but on top of it, as a utility company, we have had 4 major storms in a period of 45 days that we've had to respond to, and every person in the company has a storm role. I'm the lead person, the deputy for our corporate response section of our system incident command. So that means when there's a storm, I'm on at least 3 hours a day of phone calls. So like today, for example, I've had 3 hours so far of phone calls that I'm on with people throughout the whole company to try and figure out how we're going to be prepared, how are we going to go and help in the communities where the storm is going. And so that's an example from my industry, but in any industry, I'm sure everybody can share examples of what they're dealing with that's on top of the daily, responsibilities. You need to be able to try to prioritize for yourself what's important, because if you try to do it all at once, it's going to literally kill you. I'm going to be vulnerable and courageous with you right now to go back to my buzzwords. In that yesterday, I had a little meltdown. I have a lot going on, and I was dealing with my computer crashed in the middle of everything. I had to drive to New Orleans to get a new one from our corporate office and all of this stuff. I got home, y'all, and I literally sat in my desk and cried for a few minutes. I'm going to tell you, it was rough. And this morning, I had a phone call with my vice president that I report to, and we have that kind of relationship. And I said, you know what, Scott? I said, can I be really honest with you? Before we talk about anything else, this is the most important thing. And I said, I am stretched to the limit, and this is why. And he appreciated that I was so honest with him. And he said, I hear you, and I don't blame you. And he said, let's take a look at some of these things. And, people just don't always realize sometimes what your responsibilities are, and you have to communicate that. You can't expect your boss or anybody else to read your mind. You need to communicate. You can't use it as an excuse to not do things because you don't want to do them. But if you're a hard worker and people know it, they're going to appreciate if you go to them and are honest with them about those things. So, those are some challenges, and we get through it, and, and we'll be better for it. But you just need to know how to manage it.
That's awesome. Tracy, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would just really to kind of add to what Travis is saying there. I mean, obviously in the healthcare industry and in every industry, COVID-19 has really had a tremendous impact this year and has stretched, I think, every organization to completely redefine, the way that they deliver service, the way that they deliver, their product. So it has been an extremely challenging year in the healthcare environment. But on the flip side, I think it's also opened up some exciting challenges for the future, because it really has, increased the ability for telemedicine, telehealth. I mean, really redefining the way that we deliver care. And it also, I think it's kind of the worst of times has also kind of brought out the best of times, in terms of you really get to see what your team is made of. From an HR perspective, you really develop a sense of pride in the organization you work for, because you don't realize until you're really pushed to the max just what people are capable of. And it really does bring a sense of teamwork and camaraderie that you may have had beforehand, but the most challenging times really seem to bring that out in an even more pronounced way. So I think there's those highs and lows that I think in any industry this year have really been to the extreme.
Couldn't say it better. That's an understatement, that we have been challenged like never before. And that's great feedback. I see a series of additional questions in our chat box. One that really stands out to me is this question. If you could give yourself one piece of advice when you were our age, meaning, an 18 to 22-year-old, for most that are probably listening in, basically, what would you say and why?
This is Tracy. I think I'll start there. I think I would say to take your failures or any difficulties that you encounter along the way and look at them, try to turn them into a positive. Because I think along the way, you're going to stumble, you're going to make bad decisions, bad career choices, things you would take back. And I think the most important thing is to look back on those and realize, what did you learn from them, and how does that impact, the decisions you would make in the future, the choices you would make in the future. But you don't ever regret them, you learn from them.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to Tracy. It's hard to think of one piece of advice, but just try to be really self-aware. I mean, you have a job maybe that you don't like. Ask yourself really hard questions of what specifically was it that you didn't like about it, and what are some things you did like about it, and what are some things that you learned you're good at, and what are some things you learned that you're not good at, right? And then find your next opportunity that's going to really build upon the things that you found that you're good at, because you won't know it necessarily just from school. You'll learn it in those first couple roles that you have, of things that you are really motivated and inspired by, and things that just are not as interesting to you. So really capitalize on those strengths. You may have heard the old adage that, you're going back to grade school and you come home with a report card and you got, B's and A's and 1 C, and your parents say, let's talk about the C and why is, what's going on with that, instead of talking about what are the things you're really good at, and really capitalize on those strengths and see how, maybe you have some skills that are currently a 7 or an 8. Instead of focusing on the skills that are 1 or 2 and how can you get those to a 4, really focus on how you can get those 7 or 8 skills up to a 10. That's what I really try to focus on.
Well, multiple layers of advice, but certainly I think very wise. So Missy or Travis, would you all like to chime in on the one piece of advice you would give yourself at the age of 20-something?
Cut yourself some slack. I'm going to tell y'all, when I was young, I was bullied a lot, and it caused me to always be very concerned about what people thought about me. And early in my career, I remember feeling like I had to be something else because the person that I wasn't good enough. And it took maturity and growing up and getting older and life experience to teach me that you can only be yourself. You can't be anybody else. And sometimes there are situations where you do need to hold your cards a little closer to your chest. TMI is a real thing, and you don't need to always let everybody know everything. But at the same time, don't try to be a different version of yourself. I remember years ago, there was a show on TV. It was Martha Stewart did The Apprentice, her version of The Apprentice. And there was someone that was towards the finals of that show who made the mistake of telling Martha that her philosophy was fake it till you make it, and Martha fired her. And I can remember thinking, well, a lot of people do that. And you know what? Now I get exactly why Martha fired her. People who are just trying to fake it and aren't honest with you about where their shortcomings are people that you don't feel that you can trust. So be yourself, be real about who you are.
Excellent advice. Missy, anything you want to share on that?
No, I think everybody's touched on something kind of that I was thinking of. So no, I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, in terms of time, it looks like we're really at a stage in our employer panel discussion where we kind of want to wrap things up and provide each of you as panelists with an opportunity to provide any additional kind of closing remarks to kind of wrap up what we've been discussing, or maybe there's something that you've really wanted to share during today's discussion, but for some reason it just didn't come out through the dialogue. So either one, we'd just like to give you a chance to have some closing remarks.
I just want to put a plug for something. So first of all, Entergy is the most amazing company I've ever worked for in my entire career. I kid you not. It's been such a blessing to work at this company. The people that I work with every day just make it a pleasure to get up and work so hard. And one of my colleagues is a Southeastern alum. She's a manager of HR out in Hammond. She is looking for an intern this semester, and I think they just posted the position. I encourage anyone who might come from an HR or an analytics background to take a look at that. You could also speak to our recruiters during the career fair, but telling you, she's one of my best friends and the best managers, and you would have such a great experience. It's going to start out virtually and transfer possibly later on to being on site, maybe not. But anyway, I just wanted to put a plug for that. But other than that, this was such a pleasure, and thanks for having us.
Oh, well, thank you, Travis. Each of y'all have really provided such valuable insights and wisdom. Certainly for those who are listening in today, I'm sure they're getting lots of good nuggets of information that they can use not only for the virtual career fair, but beyond that. So next, let's see, Missy, do you have any closing remarks you would like to add?
Just that our positions are posted on Handshake and also on our college page. We also have some positions on our full-time career site as well. So definitely encourage folks to check those out, and hopefully we'll be back in the spring.
Yes. Yes, we hope to see each other in person for sure. Suni,
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to do to kind of wrap things up for us?
Sure. Yeah. I just wanted to say, thanks for having us today. I know that it's a really weird job market to be entering, especially for seniors. But COVID in some ways really has helped us connect across geographic locations so much more easily, and try to think of it more of as an opportunity. I remember, wanting to come back. I went to college actually in New England, and there's, a lot of people I went with were from these big cities that had lots of job opportunities, and, maybe investment banking, maybe all these different kind of cool opportunities. And I felt like, well, New Orleans doesn't have all those sectors, but now there's so many jobs that are going to be remote now. So, really expand your network beyond just your geographic locations. I mean, there's so much opportunity there. And also, we don't have any entry-level positions right now at Accruent, but definitely check us out and follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and hope to connect with all of y'all.
Excellent, Suni. Thank you so much. Tracy, anything you'd like to add?
No, same thing. I mean, we look forward to interacting with everyone in the virtual career fair. I would definitely say keep us in mind. Most people only think of the health system with clinical type jobs, but we have jobs all across the gamut, from IT, HR, marketing, finance and accounting. So we have lots of opportunities out there. They're also on our website. But I thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to interacting with y'all.
Thank you again, Tracy, and for all of you for taking a good bit of your time today to join us and to provide all of this great wisdom. We know that everyone is taxed and has lots to do. I want to remind our student participants that you were asked early on, and you received an email related to doing a pre-assessment. It's also in the chat box at the very beginning. And hopefully you all have had a chance to do the pre-assessment. Now is the time for you to also be prepared, and in the chat box we'll add a link for you to do the post-assessment, and also we'll likely have a follow-up email to remind you of doing that post-assessment. To do a couple of house cleaning items real quickly, of course we're doing the employer panel and many other webinars and other events, all sort of building up to our virtual career fair, which is next Wednesday, October 14th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Of course, it's in a virtual setting through Handshake. And on the screen right now, you should see basically a promotion for that. There's a QR code that you can put your camera on to bring you directly to the virtual career fair page. And to the right of the screen, are all the steps that you need to do in order to register for the career fair and then sign up and schedule sessions with employers. It's really important that you make sure that you have your resume sharp. You have whatever device you're using has a working webcam, phone, audio, also that your internet connection is strong, and that you have your devices charged. If you're using a more traditional laptop, whether it's Apple-based or not, or just a regular laptop, Google Chrome is the platform that is highly recommended and suggested by Handshake to use for the virtual event next week. I think we have one more slide that we'll put up. This is to show you that after next week, after Wednesday, we still have a couple of additional webinars, activities to help us round out what we've kind of coined October Career Month. So the week after Career Fair, which is 2 weeks away, on the 20th, we'll have a webinar that goes into a much deeper dive of your online presence. Talking about various platforms and social media, but of course spending a great deal of time talking about LinkedIn and how that can be used as a tool for career exploration, to job searching, and of course to building your network, which we heard our panelists really emphasize in today's session. Then the following week, sort of the last week of October, we have a webinar that's really going to focus on a new software system that's been in the market for just a few years that we adopted about a year ago called Big Interview. And Big Interview allows you to basically practice and hone and sharpen your interview skills. And we're going to go into a deep dive of that. And let me also remind everyone that's on the call today that we are also recording this panel. And so that if you have friends, others that you know that might learn and benefit from watching the recording of this panel discussion, it will be available on our October Career Month page. So we encourage you to share it with others. So once again, thank you very much, employers, Travis, Missy, Suni, and Tracy, for taking the time today to share all this wonderful information. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope everyone stays safe as we transition to the weekend with what's coming our way. So everyone take care, and thank you again for participating.
Thanks, Ken. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice meeting you guys.
Thank you.